was it.
That was it.
Okay.
And here's Jason.
That's okay, I'm gonna do my own introduction anyways. Go ahead. Well, thanks for coming today. Gosh, I've been working with the city of Hutchinson now, especially Irene, for almost a year, I think it's been. And we've got a lot of exciting things at my company and its various initiatives that we've been working on over that year. And we're very optimistic about the development potential here in Hutchinson. And I'm going to tell you why, and among some other things. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started here. First, a little bit of personal background on me. I grew up in Wichita, lived there my whole life. Grew up the son of an architect. My dad's an architect, and my mom is a nurse. And so, had a pretty modest upbringing. My dad worked days, my mom worked nights, but I'm proud to say that they both had really great careers. My dad started out as an intern architect in the 70s. Now he's CEO of one of the largest firms in Wichita. Worked very hard to get there. My mom's been incredible with not only a career as a pediatric nurse, but a lot of volunteerism in our family. And so you'll see that that's carried through to the legacy I'm trying to continue as you hear about the different things that we've been working on. Grew up in Wichita, went to WSU. Kind of fun to bring that up. Cheers. Been a fun ride. Daniel Gutierrez is one of my project managers and interns at our company, and he's a WSU student right now. He's going to be graduating not too distant future. So, went to WSU. I got an undergraduate degree in philosophy and math. So, degree in philosophy and minor in math. Then I went on to get a much more practical degree, which is a master's in sociology. So, along the way, my parents were wondering what in the heck I was going to do. Especially since at the time I had gotten married early and got divorced early and became a single parent of 2 kids. So I went back to school about 10 years after I would originally graduated. But my real goal was to learn how to, I wanted to be smart. I wanted to learn about things. I wanted to learn how to analyze things. I wanted to learn how to think. I wanted to learn how to reason. And that's what really attracted me to philosophy. I'm just going to turn this off because I don't think I need it. Is everybody okay?
Yeah.
So philosophy is very appealing to me. I always liked analysis, which is where the math was appealing. And then in the master's program, I was interested in it because at Wichita State University, the sociology program is quantitative, which means you just analyze numbers. It's not surveys and that type of sociology. It's actually taking data sets, specifically from the Census Bureau, and analyzing those data sets and trying to find correlations and using software to see patterns in populations and demographics. And so, great couple of years in that graduate program where I learned how to do that fundamental research and analysis of data like population and demographics type information. When I graduated, I decided I wanted to figure out what I wanted to do, and I wanted to have a specific career path because I'd been in the workforce long enough before I went back to school to realize you need to have a focus. You need to figure out what you wanted to do so you could build some expertise and get the right jobs to work your way up in whatever industry that you were in. And so I sat down and was thinking about what appealed to me. I liked the research and analysis. I thought about going into the stock market world and analyzing as a broker or an analyst in that world. I didn't like the fact that there were too many variables and it's hard to make predictions when it comes to stocks and those type of things. At the time, I was reading Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations, which talks about the fundamental wealth of a society being in its land and those improvements on those land. And I decided I really liked real estate and real estate development. A lot of money in that field. I was tired of being broke. And I also had some things I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to have some resources so I could do some things besides just business. So I decided I wanted to go into real estate and I wanted to eventually become a developer, but you don't just decide one day to be a developer and go do it. It's not, well, you do, some people do it and they go bankrupt. But actually it's a very complicated world. And so first I went to work for the Martins Companies, which is the largest commercial appraisal firm in Wichita. Worked there, started out as a researcher, very little pay, but I was there to learn and gain a foothold in the real estate industry, and eventually, in a pretty short period of time, became the assistant to the senior appraiser. while I was doing appraisals there, we started appraising a new hotel chain called Value Place. Started by a guy named Jack DeVore, who started Residence Inn, Candlewood Suites, Summerfield Suites, and then Value Place is his most recent hotel chain that he started about 6 years ago. I was very fascinated by the model. We were appraising more and more of these hotels so they could get the financing. None had been built at that time. And I met Jack one day and told him how fascinated I was with his model, and he invited me out, introduced me to a couple of people, and offered me a job. And so I started there where there was about a half a dozen people. I shared a cubicle with the controller, and I was the first researcher, and Jack will be the first to admit that he never had researchers in the past, because he always kind of figured out what to do and had a good gut feel for things. But I convinced him that that was going to be a good element to bring to this newest hotel chain of his, and over the next couple of years we built a very large research and analysis department with about a dozen research assistants. And at one point we were doing such a large volume of these projects, we had, in 1 year, we worked on 100 hotels across the United States. So a very great place to really take things to the next level with research and analysis when it came to real estate development. After that, I left Value Place and decided I'd try to go out on my own a little bit by doing a little bit of real estate development. And I started off just flipping houses. A friend of mine had come to me and said, "Hey, I'm in the public finance world and I've got some investors, and I think maybe I'd like to try flipping some houses. Do you know anything about that?" And I said, "No, but I bet you I could figure it out pretty quick." And so he raised $500,000, and we started flipping about 3 houses at a time, 100-year-old houses in the older neighborhood of town. If you're familiar with Wichita, College Hill was one of the main neighborhoods we were in. And so got my feet wet with that, but then realized that my good buddy, who's still a good friend of mine to this day, we weren't the best business partners. It's life lessons some people learn. So I, at the time, the head of the WSU Center for Real Estate had come to me and said, "I know what you did at Value Place building that whole research department, and I'm a one-man show at the Center for Real Estate when it comes to research, but I'd like to do a lot more. I'm not funded by tuition dollars, but you're going to help me write a business plan and try to build a research department for the WSU Center for Real Estate." So that was a perfect excuse to get out of my business relationship. So I accepted and went and I went and created this position and got it all set up and took the appointment for the first year as the WSU Center for Real Estate's research analyst. And so that was a great opportunity for me to have gone from working to getting an education to then going into the real world and applying it, and then going back to the university, because at the university I didn't study real estate. I was studying philosophy and sociology. So I went back, and through the opportunity of working with students in the student group and helping teach classes and those types of things, really got to see real estate development from the academic side, which kind of gave me a well-rounded background from an academic and research perspective on real estate development. So what do you do when you start out with an academic background in philosophy and sociology, and you add to that a research and development career? Well, you get what I call the theory of cooperative collaboration. I went out on my own after the Center for Real Estate and said, I'm going to make it or die trying. I'm going to start off doing consulting work, then start working on my own development ideas. But I wanted to start, and I wanted to have a core philosophy of how I went into business. I didn't want to just do business for money. I wanted to do business to try to change the way, in my field, that business was done, because real estate's a very antiquated field. It's been done the same way for years and years and years on the construction side, architectural side, the development side. And so I said, okay, what do I want to do that's different? And I came up with this concept called cooperative collaboration that was going to be the philosophy of my company. And the idea with cooperative collaboration is, and this is the definition I came up with, it's the act of individuals and organizations combining and sharing resources in an effort to work together to achieve common goals. And so what that meant from the real estate development world was that I wanted to try to create public-private partnerships. I wanted to, as a developer, come into a community and say, hey, I want to create this real estate development. By that time, I figured out I wanted to do apartments, because apartments are one of the securest, least risky real estate development options out there, because there's always a need for housing. And apartments are complicated enough that not a lot of people do them, so the supply of new apartments kind of trickles in most communities. And so because of that, you look at almost any city, and there's some exceptions, but almost every city has roughly a 90% long-term stabilized occupancy rate in apartments. And that's all apartments in the entire town, all the rental properties in the entire city. So if you keep yours clean and nice and well-managed, you can pretty much bank on being close to being full all the time. But again, they're expensive to build, and so it's more complicated than that. So I wanted to try to approach apartments in an innovative new way. And so with the formation of my company, J. Van Sickle and Company, I started my first apartment project about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years now, called Chisholm Lake Apartments. What was unique about that when it comes to real estate development and apartments in particular is I went to a contractor, engineer, electrical engineer, mechanical engineer. I went to a contractor, and I went to that entire development team and I said, will you be owner partners with me? Will you equity in your fees in return for ownership? I want you to have skin in the game. I want you to feel like you're really invested in this with me, and it'll also bring down my development cost. Then I had the first companies I went to in each of those categories said, yes, we see your vision for what you're trying to do here. Then I went to a landowner and said, will you invest the land? I was working with a landowner on a master plan for development in Northeast Wichita, and I had identified apartments as a way to really kickstart that 80-acre development, and they saw my vision and they said, yes, we'll invest the land into your project. And so that's the first instance of cooperative collaboration in my business model, is that we had all these businesses coming together, businesses and landowners pooling their resources and working together as an owner-partner team. And so that property opened back in August, 216 units, $20 million project, and completely incentive-free. I didn't ask for a dime from the city. I didn't ask for any infrastructure spending. I didn't ask for anything. We did it all on our own because I think that the real estate development world has gotten too lazy. They get handouts too often. This isn't, when I'm talking mostly about apartments, because low-income housing tax credits and other kind of projects have been the norm, especially when I start to talk to you about smaller towns. And I don't know of any other sector really in the business community where the business says, like I was talking to a friend of mine, Ty Issa, who owns Larkspur Restaurant today, and I said, Ty, you don't go to a city and say, to keep my restaurant open, I need you to subsidize me, or to get it started and open, I need you to give me some type of credits or something. And so I felt like it was my duty to try to figure out how to do a development model without any of those types of incentives. And how I did it was through that cooperative collaboration, through these different groups working together. So we had no acquisition cost on the land. We had